to say, I do that in relationships, right? And I don't even have a trauma history, and I do that. You bring in your stuff and it triggers you in a new relationship, and it may have nothing, and a lot of times nothing to do with the current relationship. And also, right, she was really wounded by her mom. She doesn't know what to do with all that pain either.
Welcome to Tell Your Story, the podcast. We are your co-hosts, Gene McIntyre, pastor and emotional intelligence coach, and Marybeth Steigenga, counselor and relationship coach. We believe that everyone has an extraordinary story to share. Together, we invite you to embark on a journey of self-discovery as we unravel the profound wisdom that lies in looking back to propel us forward. Prepare to be moved and inspired by tales of unwavering resilience, personal growth, and the pursuit of authentic living, including your own. Join us as we delve into the transformative power of storytelling. Because when you tell your story, you have the potential to change your life. And make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tell Your Story, the podcast. I like to do that at the end. Tell Your Story, the podcast. Welcome to episode number 10. Can't believe we've hit the double digits.
Yes, we do.
And I want to introduce you to my friend and co-host, Gene McIntyre, who's a pastor. She's a life coach. She's an emotional intelligence coach. And she's amazing. So I'll do that. I'm Marybeth Steigenga. I am a pastoral counselor. I am also a life coach and a chaplain. And together we are excited to have you join us on the Tell Your Story journey. So welcome to the show. Jenny, what is tonight's or this morning's, wherever people are listening, topic?
Well, today I get to speak about my patient Marissa, who I've named Marissa. Obviously, we're using fictitious names. And I'm walking Marissa through our framework, the framework that you so brilliantly developed, and telling her story, using that framework of rotten eggs and broken records and 7 steps to heal and 7 steps moving forward. And I have called her story Teen Rebel, because Marissa came to me at age maybe 15, 16, and it's now, almost to her 20s. So I'm excited to share her story. And it started with her being a very rebellious, hurt teen. And I can't wait to tell you how that has progressed throughout the years.
All right, well, let's get started.
Let's do it. Just want to remind everybody, if you haven't yet emailed us to let us know that you want your story featured, please do. Those stories are lining up and we're super, super excited. And I am looking forward to a day where we'll be able to have at least maybe one live per month, where we can take your questions live and have a lot of fun together, right? Would that be amazing, Marybeth?
That would be. That would be fun. I never even thought about that. Yeah, let's get that. We gotta build up our listener base, and then we can have some people call in or Zoom in or do whatever they can do with technology, and we'll answer their questions.
And we'll just have fun in the process, right? And show them how we land on our feet.
That's right. That's right. You and I can roll with the punches pretty well, so I think we'd be fine.
Life has trained us well.
Yeah.
All right. So last week, Marybeth, you spoke to us about your patient, and you walked your patient through this transformational framework that you created. And today I'll do it with Marissa. And the idea behind this is because next episode, we are going to start featuring our own listeners, our own viewers. And so we are kind of like setting the pattern of how we are going, because you can tell your story in a variety of different ways. But you, Marybeth, came up with this amazing framework. And the idea is to structure how we tell our story So it's not a constant wallowing in the woe is me, life is so horrible. And I think we all can probably do that and do it well, but that we can do it in a way that it actually propels us forward, right?
Correct. And to be able to tell your story in a way that you learn from it, because you don't, right, just want to wallow, although I do love a pity party myself, but you don't just want to wallow. You want to learn from your story and change and propel yourself forward. So yes, that's kind of the idea behind the framework is here's my story. What happened to me? I'll go back to my favorite, be curious. Why do I do what I do as a result of my story, my thoughts, my themes, my core beliefs, those fresh eggs and rotten eggs that we talked about last week. And then, yes, how do I move forward? And so that's where the framework can help you do that. But sure, you can tell your story in any way you want, and you will see that Jenny and I do it completely differently. So,
Let's take on Marissa, shall we?
all right,
so
go for it.
we are going to first identify Marissa's rotten eggs, right? And that is, what are those events, what are those traumatic or big life events that have been part of her life and her formation? Let's remember that Marissa is a teenager. She's in her high teens, but she's a teenager, or at least was a teenager when she started seeing me. And I have identified two really rotten eggs and maybe one positive egg, not because she doesn't have more, but because she truly had a very traumatic life growing up. So the two rotten eggs that we are going to work with, or that we really focus on with Marissa, was number one, her parents had a very tumultuous relationship and ended up getting a divorce when she was probably 7 or 8 years old. So the relationship, to the point where they were still married until they got a divorce and after, was extremely traumatic, combative. There was a lot of arguments. There was dysfunction during the marriage, during the divorce, and afterwards. Very, very difficult. Then the second rotten egg is, once their parents got a divorce, she supposedly, her parents share custody, but her mother made it a point to really plant seeds of discord between her and her siblings and their dad. And so she really worked really hard at creating that division, to the point where maybe 3 or 4 years after the divorce, Marissa chose not to go to her dad. Although they had shared custody, she and her siblings decided not to be close to their dad, not to go, because mom was very successful at planting those seeds of hatred. That became a huge issue for us to deal with, because Marissa came to me when her mother passed away. And because she was a minor, she had to come to her dad, a dad that she had learned to hate because her mom had taught her to hate her dad, right? And so those are the two big rotten eggs. And I would say positive eggs in her life, where she had a very strong bond with her sisters. That, of course, was a bond that had been forged in the midst of complete misfortune, right? Complete difficult circumstances. But at the same time, that bond remained and has remained throughout the years. And sometimes we connect the most with people that we go through difficult periods with, right? Like, do you have anybody like that in your life, Marybeth, that you've gone through like hell, therefore you're close?
Right. Yeah. Well, and my siblings would be that for me. And so when, through all of my periods of loss, for sure, those are the people who get you, right? Like, I don't have to explain things. I don't have to talk about stuff. They just know. And so, and they also know how to respond to me and support me in a way that's helpful and not harmful. So, So wow, that was a rough story for her though, starting, before as a little girl in a, super chaotic and combative home, and then divorce is never easy on kids, right? All of a
Absolutely.
sudden you don't have two parents, and then your mom does this out of her own pain, probably was like, I'm gonna, share, instead of protecting her kids from that, she let that spill over. And then, yes, now she's lost her mom. And now she has to go live with this man who supposedly is evil, horrible, bad, or whatever. And I don't like him. So
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Very, very traumatic. Talk about trauma, right? Um, and so now let's talk about broken records. What kind of broken records? One of the things that Marissa's mom did in the midst of her pain is she became a serial dater, right? She was always dating. She did not want to be alone. And so Marissa tells the story on how they lived in a duplex. On one side of the duplex, it was her mom and her lovers. And on the other side, it was Marissa and her siblings. So as she was growing up before her mom passed, which she succumbed to her drug addiction and her lifestyle, she was very much neglected. And that takes us directly into those broken records, right? The messages that are repeated in her head as a result of traumatic events.
Yep.
And several of these broken records for Marissa was, you don't matter. You're not important enough. Like, you're a pawn in this adult game. They do whatever they do and they don't care about how it impacts you. You just don't matter. You have no worth. You have no value, right? And then the second message was, you need to protect yourself. You need to defend yourself, and you cannot allow any adult or any person for that matter to come close to you because they are going to hurt you.
Yeah. Well, right, as evidenced by, I mean, she had a lot of proof for that, actually. So that becomes pretty clear. Like, the adults in my life don't protect me, they hurt me. Now I need to put up a wall or a barrier so that I can protect myself from further pain.
So when she comes to me, she comes to me like this, figuratively and literally. She wanted nothing to do with me. She wanted nothing to do with her dad. She wanted nothing to do. And it was like, I'm here because I have to, but I hate this place. I hate the world. I hate you people. I hate everybody. Nobody talked to me.
Yeah.
Nobody has cared for me. Nobody has protected me. So what's this all about that all of a sudden I need a therapist and like my dad cares? Like what? I mean, he's a monster, right? That's what mom sold. So very, very difficult. But now we move forward, right? The 7 steps to heal. And number 1 was decision time. And that is probably the one step that took us the longest to get to, because it took a while for Marissa to decide that she wanted to heal. She came to me because her dad and her stepmom came seeking my help, but it took a lot of time before she left this position and was willing to say, okay, I want to heal, right? And it took a lot of listening, a lot of hearing her out, but at the beginning she didn't want to talk. It took us probably 1.5 years of me trying to get at her through different angles before she would say, okay, I'm hurting and I don't want to hurt anymore. I want to heal. And that's, of course, the most important step, right? Because as we always say, Marybeth, healing is a choice. And Marissa had to decide.
And right, her dad and stepmom couldn't make that decision for her, and you couldn't make that decision for her. It is a personal choice that you have to make. And yes, sometimes that is the toughest one to get to, because out of your pain and hurt and woundedness, right, you're angry and you don't want to. I get it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, number two in 7 steps to heal is set firm boundaries, and it's getting rid of what no longer is serving us, right? And it's to learn no, and it's to set boundaries. And you and I have great stories that we've laughed with about saying no, right, to the person that calls you in the middle of the night and says, please help me, right? In Marissa's case, it was her friends. Her friends that she had made, they were in a different state now. But of course, with social media and technology, she was very much in touch with them. And they were very few, but they were teenagers too. And these were the people that she had surrounded herself with. And they had a pretty similar attitude. And they did not like who she was becoming and would totally sabotage any improvements she and I would make in our sessions. Every time you thought that she was getting better, all she had to do was hang a little bit with one of her friends, the rebellious, the emos, and she would go back to her, I hate the world, and, let me be sad and let me protest against this world that has damaged me. But slowly but surely, we started making a comparison. And in our sessions, I would ask Marissa, who did you hang out with this time? And she would talk to me, and I would ask a lot of probing questions. And slowly but surely, she realized that she just kept being re-injured. She kept being re-injured because she was going back to her old group of friends. She also had grandparents and significant others that were not necessarily in agreement that she was now with her dad. And they would continually attack her and plant thoughts in her head. So those broken records kept repeating, those and many others, right? And it's amazing how when we choose to heal, there are going to be people that are going to try to sabotage that. And unfortunately, the majority of the time is the closest people to us.
It's true, because sometimes you're going to need to set boundaries, right? And separate yourself from some of those unhealthy people. And Jenny, do you think the reason, or one of the reasons it took her maybe a year and a half too, was you were an adult and she didn't know that she could trust you? And so part of her is like, everyone has hurt me up to this point. Why would I believe that you are going to treat me like I need to be treated? So it took her a while to get to that trust, to build that trust.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it took me as a therapist and coach to really put down any ideas that I could have ever had. Not that I like to lecture, right? Period. I dislike it. But even more so with someone like that, like, I think with someone like that, like Marissa, you need to show rather than tell.
Yeah.
You need to show. You need to show that you're going to stay, and you need to show that you care. Because people in Marissa's life didn't care. Those that stayed didn't care, and others didn't stay. So it took a while for her to believe, right? So then, we set firm boundaries, we drop what we don't want, but then we create a healthy support system, right? And we said, if you don't have one, find some or create some. And what we did with Marissa, as you guys know, I'm not only a therapist, but I'm also a pastoral counselor. I don't mix things on a regular basis, but I happen to have a very, very strong youth ministry. And so at some point, Marissa didn't have any friends in the area. I started inviting her to some youth gatherings and parties and social events. And at the beginning, she would go and she would stand in a corner. She would come, which shows you that she had interest, right? But it was hard for her to help herself. So she would come, and sometimes she made scenes. She would lock herself in the bathroom and cry because she hated young people around her laughing and being healthy and interacting and showing love to each other. Sometimes she would come and then sit outside. So it was like she wanted to be there, but she couldn't stand being there. So again, it took her a while, but slowly she started developing relationships. At the beginning, very superficial, but eventually, at least a couple of them became deep relationships. And because she started trusting me more, and I showed her that I was here to stay, we've been now working together for almost 5 years now. she also started trusting me. So I became part of her support system, right? As you and I, Marybeth, have said it, a life coach, an emotional intelligence coach, a therapist, a pastoral counselor, all those are people in our lives that can be part of that healthy support system. So that, of course, created a new dynamic. And the more she surrounded herself with this healthy support system, the easier it was for her to set firm boundaries and get rid of that old group of people who, not that she discarded every relationship, but she learned who to allow in and how close to allow them to get to her because of the impact it was having. And obviously her healthy support system has taken kind of like a more driving force in her life. Number 4 is change the way you speak or change the way you listen. Filters, right? And we did a lot of work, family of origin work. We identified her childhood. Marissa did and still until this day talks a lot about how her upbringing impacted the way she hears and also the way she communicates. Probably one of the most insightful experiences that we had about this point was, Marissa didn't say good morning, didn't say good night, didn't acknowledge her family, and this is one of the things that her dad and stepmom shared with me, and they just couldn't understand it. So I'm sitting with Marissa on a session, and I said, talk to me about your interaction with your current family. And she says, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I go, well, do they acknowledge you? And she's like, yeah. But I have a very hard time interacting with them. I want to be left to myself. And I said, Marissa, when you were growing up and you were with your mom, mostly with your mom, did she say good morning to you? She thought about it. She said, no, not really. She kind of got me ready for school. I said, well, when you came back from school, did she tell you how your day had been? No. I said, when you went to bed, did you say good night? She said, I might have at the beginning, but then I stopped doing it because I don't think she cared. So she went to bed with her siblings. I might have said something like, going to bed. But there was no good morning. How are you? How was your day? Good night. Sleep tight. Don't let the bugs. I mean, there was none of these things that many of us take for granted. So she had no idea how to interact.
Well, right. And I think, we people who did grow up in an environment who, your parents did those things with you, you like, oh, that's just natural and you do it. But no, that is a learned thing. If you don't have that, you don't know how to do it. And so, sure, she's like, why would I say good morning and good night to these people? I never have done that before. It was a weird concept to her.
Exactly. So we say change the way you speak or change the way you listen, because when she would hear things like, Marissa, good morning, like I'm here, like why are you not, she couldn't hear that.
Yeah.
Because all she could hear was, I don't matter, nobody cares, I don't care. Oh, and by the way, I'm gonna dig it to you. Since nobody used to care about good morning, how about I do that to you too? And we've said this, right? When you go through trauma, you grow up to be either a victim or an abuser. Sometimes it's a mix of both. And in a lot of ways, Marissa was making her new family pay for the neglect and abuse and mistreatment that she had received while growing up. Point number 5 is, I'm sorry. And so when we talk about changing the way we speak, so once we had that conversation, it was like a little light bulb turned on Marissa, and she's like, oh, because she wasn't even realizing that that's what she was doing. She wasn't getting up and saying, oh, I'm going to make you pay. Sometimes it's our subconscious, and those broken records are replaying and create those filters, right? So once she discovered that this was why, we said, let's try to differentiate. Because you're playing a broken record from an old relationship and bringing into this new one when these people did not do that to you. So it's hard. It's hard to break those records, but those broken records don't apply to this new relationship. Marybeth?
Well, and I do that in relationships, right? And I don't even have a trauma history, and I do that. You bring in your stuff and it triggers you in a new relationship, and it may have nothing, and a lot of times nothing to do with the current relationship. And also, right, she was really wounded by her mom and her dad really in the beginning because of the divorce and all of that, right? And so she doesn't know what to do with all that pain either. And so it
Absolutely.
has to come out there. And unfortunately, it was coming out to people who were trying now to love her and do what was right.
Exactly. And discipline, regular discipline. Marissa, this is your curfew, or clean your room. It's going through the filter of I don't care, I don't matter, and you don't like me, and you don't take care of me. So it wasn't coming as regular discipline. It was coming as more rejection, more
Yeah.
people trying to mistreat her, when in reality, they were just trying to parent her.
Yeah.
But she didn't know what good parenting was. So she would take instructions like that. She would take that parenting, run it through the filter of neglect, nobody likes me, I'm not loved, and it came across as more abuse.
Yeah.
And so we had to work on changing the way she was speaking or behaving and the way she was listening. And the best way I found how to do that is continually going back to her childhood and making a comparison. This is this is that. Differentiate. And that takes us to our next point, which is identify and practice 2 steps to stop reinforcing your broken records. And the phrase I just used is a phrase that I helped Marissa memorize. This was then, this is now. And so whenever she would find herself feeling anger against her stepmom or her dad, I would say, ask yourself, am I reacting to what they're saying, to what they're doing, or am I reacting to my broken record? And then normally it was the second one. And she would say, this was then, this is now. Just that silly phrase. And sometimes we would be talking, we would be in our therapy sessions, and she would be venting. And I would say, are you sure this is not this was then, this is now? And she's like, oh, yeah, it is, But, such a silly practice that she started, doing. And then another step to reinforce that broken record, and it's a broken record that I probably have not clearly identified, but it comes with the neglect, abuse, I need to be protect myself, and I need to be loved. It's Marissa also developed a very, very strong tendency to be loved and to be wanted. And so that manifested itself in her jumping into relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so our second step that we used was, what am I trying to replace? Because what we studied together was that she was trying to fill a gap of love and acceptance in her heart that no boyfriend in the world was going to be able to fill. And so we said, I would say, Marissa, is this truly someone that you can develop a loving relationship with? Or are they telling you what you yearn to hear? That you're beautiful, that you're smart, that are they just telling you this and you are so thirsty and hungry for this affirmation that you didn't receive, that you're trying to fill that void with that? Because if that's what you're trying to do, that relationship is not going to fill it. For starters, at some point, they're going to get tired of telling you that, right? I mean, I don't care how much somebody loves you. They cannot tell you 24/7, you're beautiful, you're smart, I love you, and they cannot be with you together. So what happens is you either jump into very manipulative relationships where people just realize that as long as they tell you what you want to hear, they can get whatever they want from you. Or
Right.
two, you jump into a healthy relationship, but there's not enough amount of attention or love that can satisfy your void.
Well, right. And no amount of attention or love from anyone is going to fix what happened to you back then. I don't
Exactly.
care, right? I don't care if you had the most perfect person who, was a securely attached person. It's still not going to fill that void. And don't we look at other ways? Her way was to jump into relationships, but other people might use drugs or alcohol or shopping or food or whatever to try to fill that void. I just had someone tell me the other day, they were like, I just want to make a big purchase. I want to buy a car. I want to buy a house. I want to buy, and I was like, they're like, it's like, where is that coming from? And they're like, I don't know. I need to buy something. And I was like, maybe we need to think about like, what are you trying to fill with that thing? So they went home and did some soul searching and realized that they didn't need a new car or a new house, but that
I'm glad.
right, but that they were trying to fill they had a relationship thing going on that wasn't meeting their needs. And they're like, I felt like a hole and they were trying to fill it. I was like, well, a house is a big way to fill that. So
Yeah. And isn't it true that when we lack control, and I was talking to a patient, yes, just last night about this, when we are in a situation and we lack complete control, we search of ways or of situations where we can have some control, right? I mean, with people with eating disorders is through anorexia or bulimia. Like I can't control this, but I can control what comes into my body, what comes out, and my weight, right?
yep.
With your client, like, oh, let me buy something. I have the power to buy something because we feel powerless in
Mhm.
specific areas of our lives. And so, again, Marissa felt powerless in the way that she had been brought up, in the lack of attention that she had gotten. And she was trying really hard to fill that void with race. So those were the two steps that would she would practice to stop reinforcing those broken records. This was then, this is now. And the second one was asking herself the question, what void am I trying to fill? And I'm happy to report that Marissa stopped being a serial dater, which she was really falling into the same pattern of behavior as her mother had before
Yeah.
her. She stopped. And now it's so amazing. She's a gorgeous young woman. And she, of course, has suitors that are interested. But she asked herself that question. I am not going to try to fill a void. I'm going to evaluate this person for who they are and the possibility of a relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, or potential husband, wife, rather than trying to fill the void that my upbringing left for me. Right. All right. The sixth one is fail better, suck less tomorrow. And as therapists, Marybeth, you and I know that one of the most beautiful things that you and I get to do is reassure our patients that even if they got it wrong, they're going to do better tomorrow. And of course, Marissa came to me many times after great conversations and great breakthroughs. I understand where this is coming from. And then go back to her family and screw it again, have a big conflict, a big blow up, and coming back to me and saying, this is not working. And I said, on the opposite, the fact that you realize that your behavior was inappropriate tells us that this is working. And so you're just going to fail better. Or as you would say, Marybeth, you're just going to suck better tomorrow. Or
That's right.
suck less. No,
Up
suck
left.
less.
Yeah.
Fail better or suck less.
Yeah.
And so she has continued to come. And like you and me, Marybeth, she sucks less and less and less.
There you go, right? And we both, I mean, we talk about this all the time as on the daily, I fail at something, right? And it's like, okay, that didn't work. I'm not going to judge it. I'm not going to get angry about it. Which is what I used to do. I'm going to be like, all right, well, that was a wash. Got to do it better tomorrow. And
Yeah,
what did I learn from that?
absolutely. Step number 7 is clean up your mess or try to. And I am still working with Marissa in this area. Marissa has a very, very hard time admitting responsibility when she blows it. She has a very hard time saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me. So she and I are still actively working on that.
Okay.
It's not a frontier that she has conquered yet, but she realizes, and we're working on it. Because unfortunately, she grew up without meaningful relationships. So it's very hard for her to maintain the ones she currently has. And so she would say a lot of her new relationships say things like, you're wrong. Why can you not admit it? And she has a very, very hard time admitting it. And every time something like that happens, it takes a few sessions for us to get her to the point where she can savage the relationships. And I hate to say it, but there have been times where she has not been successful because some people have not felt that her inability to accept responsibility for her actions was something they wanted to deal with. But I think that even those failures, even those failed relationships have helped Marissa realize that that is an area that she has to really work and apply herself to.
Yeah.
All right. And so we are in our last group of steps, and that is 7 steps to move forwards. Number 1 is know thyself. And Marissa continues in that process of self-discovery, understanding who she is, what has shaped the way she behaves. Number 2 is grieve. This is something that Marissa does on a regular basis. She is not done grieving. And each one of us grieves in a different way. You know, there's some of us that can have a few sessions and we're like, okay, I understand. But there's others, particularly depending on the type of trauma that we've experienced, that it takes us a little bit longer. And for Marissa, it's a very in-depth, painful upbringing that she's dealing with. Don't forget, she's now living with the dad that was bad-mouthed before her for most of her childhood. And so she's still trying to differentiate the image that was painted of her dad and the dad that wants to be known and that wants to show her that he loves her. But she's still she's still grieving. She's still grieving having been neglected. She's still grieving the divorce of her parents. And as I tell her over and over again, it is okay. Grieve as long as you want and as hard as you want. It is okay. No one can tell you stop grieving today.
No, and I think when you come out of that type of upbringing, that's going to be a lifelong, not that she's going to grieve every day for the rest of her life, but things will come up where she'll be like, wait a minute, I just screwed this up and it's really because of what happened to me and I'm angry and now I have to grieve that again. And so yes, I love that. You grieve how you want to grieve and you grieve as long as you need to grieve and don't let anybody tell you any different.
Exactly. Then there's gratitude. Step number 3, focus on the things that are going well. Focus on the things that you do have. And, you know, a lot of wonderful things have happened for Marissa. She has, in the last almost 4 years, started to really love herself, work out, care about her appearance. So even her whole persona, you know, has changed. She has developed now a strong relationship with her stepmother. Not a mother-daughter relationship, but a more of a friend relationship. She's very grateful for that. As a matter of fact, she's closer to her stepmom than she is to her own father. So she's very grateful for that. One of her siblings was able to join her, so they're here now together. And they, you know, she's very grateful about that. And yes, she is grateful for the relationship that she's trying to build with her dad. I think that she has a lot of reasons to be sad, but she's chosen to get off the street after the car hit her and try to heal, right? And a great way to do that is finding those things that are going well. She is now headed to college, graduated from high school, headed to college. And as she told me the other day, she says, I doubt very much I would be where I am today if I had stayed where I was. So even like the death of her mom, as terrible as it is, like she's grieved it, but she's also grateful that it allowed her to like reset and move away from a horrible life environment and start anew with her new family. Then be kind to yourself, self-care. She's a teenager, so I have not had to work very hard at that.
Yeah, they're usually pretty good at taking care of themselves. That's
Very,
not
very good. Very
yeah,
good
that's
at
not a
shopping.
deficit in that area. No.
Yeah, very good at shopping, very good at buying new makeup, what's the new trend, what I mean, but it's so refreshing. Because when she came to me, she came like this and she didn't care about herself. She didn't care about life. She just did not care. But now she really deeply cares about herself and she's very kind to herself. And it shows, right? It really, really shows. So that's it has been a lot of fun to watch Marissa going from a resentful, emo, dark child to this blossoming young attractive woman, right? I mean, I look at her and there's not even a comparison between the person that I started treating almost 4 years ago. It's pretty amazing. Then number 5 is be curious about your thoughts and action. There's more work to be done. And Marissa is getting ready to go into a new stage of her life, and I'm encouraging her, since we're not going to be in the same town, to explore whether she wants to enroll maybe a new therapist, right? Somebody that can help her in this new stage of life. There are college resources, psychological and therapy resources. And I've told her, I said, I'm always going to be here to coach you as you need me, but be curious. Be curious about what's out there. Be curious about maybe finding a new person that works with college age students that is going to be closer to you, that can help you. What I've told her is to not stop growing, right? You don't just say, okay, trauma, bye, see ya, right? It's going to keep coming. And if you let your guard down, it can come at you with a vengeance. So make sure, even if you don't need to see someone with the same frequency, even if there's less pain, make sure that you don't stop reviewing your thoughts, reviewing your actions, and verifying how your upbringing is still having an impact on those deep-seated broken records, if that makes any sense.
Yep, for sure.
And that goes together with 6. Stay positive, persevere, right? That's what I tell her, is do not stop. And she's decided that she is not going to stop. And one of the things that I've used when she gets discouraged, once in a while she gets discouraged, is I tell her, I said, you're about to start your own family, right? Like one of these days you're going to come and you're going to show me an engagement ring. And you have future generations to raise. And I said, of course, I want you to be positive because of you. I want you to persevere because of you. But if that fails you, if it doesn't give you enough motivation, I always tell her, I said, do you want to give your children a different upbringing that you had? And she says, absolutely. And I said, then make that your fuel to persevere, to never stop working on your emotional healing, because future generations, the success of your marriage, the success of your professional career, because Marybeth, all our traumas and our broken records, they don't stop at home.
No.
They impact our friendships, they impact our careers. So that's what I tell her. I say, you have many reasons to stay positive. You're just starting your life. So you need to stay on top of it. You need to persevere. You need to never give up. So that works. And then number 7 is set yourself free. And it's the power of forgiveness. And I cannot think of a patient. I mean, most of my patients have a lot of forgiving to do in one way or the other. But Marissa, she has a lot of forgiving to do. And she lives with her biological dad now, who, although he was not the monster that he was painted to be, there's a lot of things that he didn't get right.
Yep.
in the original marriage, in separating himself, extricating himself from his children, because at some point he started getting hurt that although he had joint custody, they weren't coming to him. So he started getting really, really hurt. So he extricated himself from them. And in so doing, he kind of like confirmed the image that was being painted of him, right? He doesn't
Right.
care,
Yeah.
doesn't
He
love.
reinforced that, right, out of his
Absolutely.
own pain, right?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of forgiveness that needs to be done there. Um, and she has to forgive a mom that's no longer around to accept her forgiveness.
Yeah.
She has to forgive adults that saw what was going on and how she was being raised and didn't intervene, right? And she has to forgive old friends who uh mistreat her because she's a new person, right? And don't want to hang with them. So she has to do a lot of forgiveness. But probably the person that she has to forgive the most is herself. She does makes mistakes. She doesn't get it right all the time. And she and I talk a lot about how she needs to learn to be gentle with herself. And she needs to be gentle with others, even the people that injured her, because at the end of the day, like you and I have said many times, Marybeth, not forgiving the people that have hurt us is the equivalent to drinking rat poison and expecting them to be the ones that fall dead, right? So we've discovered, Marissa and I have discovered and continue to explore the fact that the longer she takes to start forgiving, is the longer she's going to take to heal. And she has decided to heal.
Yeah.
So that's Marissa's story for you guys. It's definitely not a concluded story yet. And I don't think we're supposed to, right? I think that as long as we are on this earth, we are meant to continue growing and changing and learning, and particularly if we've had such a traumatic upbringing.
For sure. If you, I heard someone say once, if you're not dead, you're not done. So there you go. You keep growing. And in my life, every year, I feel like there's a new thing I learn or a new way that in my story, identifying things in my story and changing that. And so I kept thinking, you were talking about her story. The one great thing about this is, one, her dad and her stepmom are like, we need to get her some help, even though she wasn't receptive to it.
Yep.
So that was great. And they stood firm, because I'm sure she was like, I don't want to go. I'm not going. This is stupid. I'm sure she did all of that, right? But they're like,
Yeah.
no, they stood firm. So that was great. And two, how amazing that she's learning all of this stuff at, 16, 17, 18 years old instead of 45, 46, 47 years old, right? Like she
Absolutely.
will be able to launch. And I like to always tell my younger clients, man, I wish I was you. I wish I would have learned this. My life would have been different. However, then I always go with well, because my mistakes brought me to where I am, would I really want to change them? Probably not.
And we probably can help people in a complete different way because we went through what we went through, right? So
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, there's power in being a child. When we're children, we learn everything so much better, and that includes language, academics, and yes, therapy.
And yes, and therapy as well. So, well, that was a great story. I'm hoping that Marissa, as she launches into her adulthood coming up here, that she'll be able to carry on the lessons that she learned. And like the beauty of it is you became that one safe adult who just never went away. Like, I'm here, whether you want to sit and be angry, you can, but I'm not going anywhere, which is such a beautiful thing. And yes, if you have trouble developing a support system, really go get a coach or a counselor. That's a great way to learn how to attach securely to someone who's not going to go away.
I had a patient told me the other day that she felt guilty thinking of me as part of her support system because she pays me. I told her, I said, you pay me because I have to eat. And my time, the time I spend with you needs to be compensated because I have bills to pay. But I don't support you because you pay me. You pay me because I need to support myself. But I don't support you because you pay me. I support you because I genuinely care about you and I care about your progress as a human being. And that's probably a good way to look at your therapist and at your coach. If you're hanging with the right coach and with the right therapist, yeah, of course, maybe insurance is kicking in and paying. Maybe there's a degree of compensation. And I'm not suggesting, and I don't think Marybeth and I are suggesting that you have to be best friends, but don't let that stop you from considering that person as part of your support system just because they're under your insurance or because they are supposed to be part of your support system.
Yeah, for sure. You need that healthy person. And I know from previous counselors and coaches that I've gone to that they were a huge support for me, a huge support, like a cheerleader. You go in feeling like, oh, I stink at this, I failed again, I'm never gonna get this right. And then you come out feeling like, oh no, there's somebody who is cheering me on and no judgment about my mistakes, just wants me to succeed. So yeah, you go find yourself a coach or a counselor.
Well, when you were my marriage counseling before we became friends, you pretty much saved my marriage. So it doesn't get any more support system than that, right? I don't know if I've said this before, but for a while, guys, when we would have a wedding anniversary before my husband passed away, I would send Marybeth a happy anniversary card saying happy anniversary to John and Jenny and thank you, Marybeth, right? That is how much of a support system she was for us. And then later, as we became friends, then she became part of the real support.
Yeah. Yeah, then I became a different kind of support. But yes, I did. I would either get a text message or a voicemail or sometimes a card that on your anniversary of it's 19 years, it's whatever, you would just do that. So it always made me smile for sure.
All right, Miss Marybeth, where do we go from here?
So now it's time, I guess you and I've got some work to do here. We do have a couple people lined up here that have emailed us, but we got to do the work of sifting through our applications and people who want to be on the podcast with us. So keep sending those in, and Jenny and I promise to go through all of them and get you on the show. And part of doing the framework too is that you have so that we don't have a 16-day podcast, but just a 35 to 45-minute podcast, right? Because you can get lost in your story if you don't have some parameters. So that's, got to have a little framework going on there. So yeah. So that's what's next. Episode number 11. No, it's going to be super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, guys. From this moment forward, is you. You guys are taking over the show.
Right. And now they don't have to listen to us talk so much.
Exactly. So, now they're like, thank goodness.
That's right. Thank goodness we don't have to listen to those two anymore.
Exactly. I love it because obviously you spoke about your patient. I spoke about one of my patients, but it's been secondhand, right? But from now on, we get to interview people in real life and ask them to tell their story. And I cannot wait to see the testimonies and the comments about how these stories are going to start changing not only the individuals that we're going to be talking to, but also the people that are going to be listening and watching.
Yeah, so we will see everybody in a couple of weeks on episode number 11. I'm looking forward to it. Until then, Jenny, try not to work too hard over there in Florida. I'm over here in Tucson. Yesterday it was 114 degrees outside. So I'll try to stay cool and you try not to work too hard.
Good luck with that. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.